Life, as I knew it, was perfect, or at least that's what I had convinced myself. I had everything a man could ask for: a beautiful, loving wife, a career I was proud of, and a home that felt like a sanctuary. 7 years of marriage had shaped us into what I believed was an unbreakable team. Sure, we had our ups and downs, what couple didn't? But deep down, I never doubted our love. Every morning, I woke up to the sight of her sleeping peacefully beside me. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, her face soft and relaxed. I'd quietly slip out of bed, careful not to wake her, and head to the kitchen to start our day just the way she liked. Fresh coffee brewing, the scent filling the house. She would walk in, rubbing sleep from her eyes, flash me that warm, sleepy smile, and lean into me for a hug. "You're too good to me," she'd whisper, her voice husky from sleep. And I'd laugh, kiss her forehead, and tell her, "That's my job, isn't it?" We were happy, or at least, I thought we were. And then, everything changed. It all started with a business trip. I had been working at my company for 5 years, steadily climbing the ranks. My boss, Mr. Holloway, was a man I deeply respected. He was sharp, confident, and in many ways the kind of professional I aspired to be. So when he personally asked me to accompany him on a crucial out-of-town conference, I didn't hesitate. It was an opportunity one couldn't pass up. I told my wife about the trip over dinner, expecting her usual support. But that night, something felt off. She poked at her food absent-mindedly, barely touching her wine. Her usual enthusiasm, her tell-me-everything energy was missing. Instead, she simply nodded and muttered, "How long will you be gone?" "Just 3 days," I reassured her. "It's nothing big, just a few meetings and networking events. I'll be back before you know it." She gave me a tight smile. Right? 3 days. At the time, I brushed it off. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was stressed about something else. I didn't think much of it. I should have. The morning of my departure, she kissed me goodbye a little too quickly, her arms around me feeling less familiar. I chalked it up to my nerves. Maybe I was just imagining things. At the airport, I sent her a text before takeoff. "Just boarded. Miss you already." She didn't reply. A small pang of unease settled in my gut, but I shook it off. It was just 3 days. What could possibly go wrong? Little did I know, those 3 days would destroy everything I believed about my marriage. When I finally stepped through the front door after 3 long days away, I expected to be greeted with the warmth of home, the scent of her favorite lavender candles, the feeling of her arms wrapping tightly around me, the sound of her excited voice telling me how much she missed me. But none of that happened. Instead, my wife stood a few feet away, her expression unreadable. She gave me a quick, almost obligatory hug, barely letting our bodies touch before pulling away. No lingering embrace, no affectionate kiss on the cheek. Something was different. I told myself I was overthinking it. I had just spent 3 days in a stressful work environment, barely getting any sleep, and maybe I was just hypersensitive. But as the hours passed, I couldn't ignore the shift in the air. She was quieter than usual, moving around the house as if she was walking on eggshells. Every time I tried to make eye contact, she glanced away too quickly, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. And then I noticed something else: her phone. For years, she had been the type of person who was constantly glued to her phone. Not in an obsessive way, but she loved staying connected, texting friends, scrolling through social media, sending me cute little messages throughout the day. But now, her phone was nowhere in sight. At first, I thought she had just left it in another room, but then I saw it, face down on the coffee table, completely silent. No vibrations, no message notifications, just nothing. My stomach tightened. Casually, I asked, "You're not checking your phone today?" She hesitated, then forced a laugh. "Oh, I just didn't want any distractions while we catch up." That was the first red flag. The second red flag came later that night. We were getting ready for bed, and as I turned off the lights, I noticed something strange. Her phone wasn't on her nightstand. For as long as we'd been together, she always kept it right next to her. She'd charge it overnight, sometimes scrolling through Pinterest or reading before falling asleep. But now it was missing. I tried to act normal. "Hey, you forgot your phone," I said casually, pointing toward the empty space. She stiffened. "Oh yeah, I left it in the kitchen." I waited for her to get up and grab it. She didn't. Instead, she pulled the covers over her body, facing away from me. "Too tired to check it tonight." That's when I knew something was really, really wrong. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was I being paranoid? Overthinking things? Maybe she was just exhausted. Maybe she was dealing with something personal she hadn't told me about. But then a much darker thought crept into my mind, one I didn't want to entertain. What if she was hiding something? What if she was hiding someone? I turned to look at her, her back still facing me. She was breathing evenly, but I could tell she wasn't asleep. I wanted to ask. I wanted to shake her awake and demand to know why she was acting so strangely. But something held me back. I decided to wait, to watch. And that's when I made a silent promise to myself. I was going to find out the truth. It happened late at night, when the house was cloaked in silence. I was sitting in the living room, sipping on a glass of whiskey, trying to drown out the unsettling feeling that had been gnawing at me ever since I returned from my trip. My wife had gone upstairs to get ready for bed nearly an hour ago, yet I could still hear her faint footsteps pacing in our bedroom. Something wasn't right. Then I heard it, a muffled voice. At first, I thought she was just talking to herself, maybe humming, maybe listening to something. But then I realized she was whispering. I sat up, straining my ears. The voice on the other end of the line was deeper, rougher, familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Curiosity turned into dread as I quietly stood up and moved toward the staircase. I could hear her more clearly now. "I don't know. I just feel like he's starting to suspect something." My breath caught in my throat. I took another step, pressing my back against the wall, listening. Then I heard the voice on the other end, a voice that sent an ice-cold chill straight down my spine. My boss. The glass in my hand nearly slipped. I gripped the railing to steady myself as my mind raced, my heart hammering against my ribs. "You know we can't keep doing this." His voice came through the phone, low and steady, almost rehearsed. "If he finds out..." I didn't hear the rest. My pulse was roaring in my ears. I wanted to burst into the room, grab her phone, scream at her, demand to know exactly what the hell was going on. But I didn't. I forced myself to stay still, to listen. "He won't find out," she whispered. "I swear. I have everything under control." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth would crack. Control? Control of what? My breathing was shallow, my chest tight with anger and confusion. The room around me blurred, and for the first time in my marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own home. What had I just stumbled upon? I knew I had two choices. I could storm in there, confront her right now, and risk hearing a lie straight to my face. Or I could be smart. I could wait, watch, gather the pieces, and make sure when I confronted her, there would be no way out. I turned and walked back downstairs, my hands trembling as I poured myself another drink. The woman I loved, my wife, was keeping a secret from me. And worse, she wasn't keeping it alone. The next morning, I sat across from her at the breakfast table, watching her carefully. She looked the same soft features, same delicate way. She tucked her hair behind her ear, same absent-minded stirring of her coffee. But I knew better now. I knew that beneath the familiar surface, something was different. I could still hear my boss's voice in my head from the night before. "We can't keep doing this. If he finds out..." Those words played over and over, like a broken record, taunting me. I had to confront her. I had to know the truth. "Hey," I started, keeping my tone as casual as possible. "I heard you talking on the phone last night. Her hand froze on the coffee cup for the briefest second, so quick anyone else would have missed it. But I didn't. She blinked, then laughed lightly. Oh, eavesdropping on me now? I didn't smile. Who were you talking to? Another pause. It was subtle, but it was there. Just a friend, she said, taking a slow sip of coffee. A friend. Not good enough. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. I could have sworn I heard a man's voice. Sounded a lot like my boss. She almost choked on her drink. A nervous cough, a quick glance down, then a shake of her head. Oh my God, are you serious? You think I was talking to your boss? She let out a short laugh, too sharp, too forced. You're jealous of Mr. Holloway now? She continued, setting her cup down a little too hard. That's actually hilarious. But there was nothing funny about this. Her hands, normally steady and graceful, were fidgeting in her lap. Her breathing, normally slow and calm, was just a little too quick. And her eyes, normally full of warmth when she looked at me, held something else now. Fear. I'm not jealous, I said, my voice firm. I just think it's strange that I come home, and suddenly you're acting different. Your phone is always on silent. You won't even leave it in the same room as me anymore. And now, I hear you whispering to a man in the middle of the night. Her jaw tightened. You're being ridiculous, she snapped. I don't know what you think you heard, but I wasn't talking to your boss. And even if I was, so what? He's your superior. Maybe he was just calling to check in on you. A good excuse. A logical excuse. But the way she said it, it didn't sit right. I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence stretch between us. Then, I did something unexpected. I smiled. You're right, I said, leaning back in my chair. I probably just misheard. She blinked. For a split second, I saw relief flash across her face. And that's when I knew. She was lying. She thought I was letting it go. She thought she was safe. She had no idea that this was just the beginning. The next day, the uneasy feeling in my chest hadn't gone away. If anything, it had gotten worse. Her laughter from the night before, the way she brushed off my concerns, played over and over in my head like a cruel joke. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But the nagging suspicion wouldn't let go. The way she flinched at my question, the forced laugh, the nervous hands, it all pointed to one thing. She was lying to me, and I needed proof. That evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, I pretended everything was normal. I laughed at the jokes, responded to her small talk, even kissed her goodnight like I always did. But I was waiting for my moment, and it came the next morning. She woke up before me, as she always did, stretching lazily before heading to the bathroom for her usual long, steamy shower. Her phone sat on the nightstand, face down. I stared at it, my heart pounding. Should I? Would I even find anything? For a moment, I almost walked away, almost convinced myself that I was being crazy, paranoid. But then a single thought stopped me. What if I don't check? And I never find out the truth. I reached for her phone. The screen lit up as soon as I picked it up, and that's when I saw it. A single unread message. From a contact saved under just one letter. H. I didn't need to guess who that was. My hands felt numb as I opened it. And then my entire world shattered. Last night was incredible, but we have to be careful. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The room spun. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. There was no mistaking what this meant. No misinterpreting. No making excuses. This wasn't some innocent conversation. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. My wife, the woman I had loved, trusted, built a life with, had spent the night with him. My boss. And last night, when she had laughed in my face, when she had looked me in the eyes and told me I was imagining things, she had already betrayed me. I forced myself to keep reading. The messages above it were just as damning. I keep thinking about the way you felt last night. I wish I could see you again sooner. He's acting weird. I think he might suspect something. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. She knew I was catching on, and she still went to bed beside me, still kissed me, still looked me in the eye like nothing had happened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone, smash it against the wall, wake her up and demand the truth. But instead, I did something much worse. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, and then I walked out of the room, because at that moment, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to confront her just yet. No, I was going to make her think she got away with it. And then, I was going to destroy them both. I didn't say a word. Not that morning. Not that afternoon. Not even when she kissed me goodbye before heading to work, her lips pressing against mine like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I knew the truth now. And I knew that if I confronted her too soon, she would just lie, twist the story, try to manipulate me into believing I had imagined it all. No, I needed undeniable proof, something she couldn't talk her way out of. So, I made a plan. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I looked at her across the table and forced myself to smile. I forgot to tell you, I said casually, stabbing a piece of steak with my fork. I had to go on another trip, last-minute work thing. I saw it just for a split second, the flicker in her eyes, the way her fingers twitched around her wine glass. She recovered quickly, forcing a small pout. So soon? Yeah, I sighed. It's just one night. I'll be back tomorrow. She nodded, taking a sip of her wine. That sucks. But, work is work. She wasn't upset. She wasn't disappointed. If anything, she looked relieved. And that was all the confirmation I needed. As soon as she left for work the next morning, I got to work. I bought a small, discreet security camera, one that could connect to my phone in real time. I placed it on the bookshelf in our living room, angling it just right so it had a perfect view of the front door and the couch. She wouldn't notice it. She never noticed small details. By the time she got home that evening, I had already left for my trip. In reality, I was sitting in a cheap motel room, my laptop open, my phone connected to the camera's live feed. And I waited. Hours passed. She moved around the house normally at first, made herself dinner, watched a little TV, scrolled on her phone. For a brief moment, I wondered, what if I was wrong? What if she had truly made a mistake and ended things? What if she wasn't expecting anyone? And then, at exactly 10:17 p.m., the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. She practically ran to the door, smoothing her hair down before opening it. And there he was, my boss. Mr. Holloway stepped inside like he had done it 100 times before. No hesitation, no guilt. She smiled at him, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. Then, she reached up and kissed him. Deep, slow, familiar. I felt like I was going to be sick. They sat on the couch, laughing softly, whispering things I couldn't hear. Then, I watched as he tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers grazing her cheek. She leaned into his touch. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. This was my wife, in my home, with him. And then, as if to make matters worse, she spoke, her voice low, teasing. You sure he's really gone? Yeah, Holloway chuckled, his arm draping over the back of the couch. He's at some hotel. We have the whole night. They laughed, and something inside me snapped. I could have called her right then, could have sent her a screenshot, confronted her, screamed, let the rage take over. But no, I had waited this long. I could wait a little longer, because now I didn't just want revenge. I wanted to ruin them. I sat in that dimly lit motel room, my phone in my hand, watching the live feed from my hidden camera. A single screen, a single moment that would change everything. The house was quiet. She was alone. She moved around the living room like nothing was wrong, scrolling through her phone, sipping wine, flipping channels on the TV. It almost made me second-guess myself. Almost. Then, exactly an hour after I left, the doorbell rang. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. I watched as she paused, glanced toward the door, her expression shifting, something sparking in her eyes. Excitement? Anticipation? She took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, adjusted her top, and then walked toward the door. I held my breath. She opened it, and there he was, my boss. Mr. Holloway stood on the doorstep, his stance relaxed, like he belonged there. Like this wasn't the first time. He didn't hesitate. He didn't check his surroundings. He just walked inside, his confidence unshaken, as if my home was his now. And then, before I could process what was happening, she smiled at him. Not just any smile. A real one. A smile I hadn't seen in months. The kind of smile that used to be reserved for me. And then she leaned in. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing herself against him, whispering something against his ear. He smirked. His hands settled on her waist like they belonged there, like they had done this 100 times before. And then she kissed him, not hesitant, not unsure, deep, slow, intimate, like a wife kissing her husband, except he wasn't her husband. I was. My vision blurred, my chest tightened. I gripped the edges of the motel nightstand, my knuckles turning white. But I forced myself to keep watching. I had to watch, because the moment I looked away, the moment I let myself break, they would win. She pulled back first, biting her lip, eyes flicking toward the stairs. "Come on," she whispered. "We don't have much time." Much time. Like she had done this before. Like she knew exactly how long I'd be gone. Like she had planned this. Holloway chuckled, running a hand through her hair, his touch too familiar. "Relax. We have all night, don't we?" She giggled. Then she took his hand and led him upstairs, to our bedroom. Something inside me snapped. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone, to drive straight home, to tear my whole life apart in one instant of blind fury. But I didn't. I sat there, fists clenched, heart pounding, forcing myself to stay calm. Because now I knew. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some stupid drunken accident or a moment of weakness. This was calculated. This was premeditated. And that meant one thing. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg for an explanation. I was going to end this on my terms. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that cheap motel room, staring at my phone screen long after the live feed had gone dark, long after they had disappeared upstairs. I imagined every disgusting detail, every touch, every whisper, every betrayal, and I let it burn. By morning, I was calm, too calm, because I knew exactly what I was going to do. I arrived home right on schedule, pulling into the driveway as if it were just another ordinary day. I could already picture how this would go. She would greet me at the door like the perfect wife. Maybe she would wrap her arms around me, kiss me, ask how my trip went like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just slept with my boss in our bed. And that's exactly what she did. As soon as I stepped inside, she walked over with a soft smile, standing on her toes to kiss my cheek. "Hey, baby, how was your trip?" I almost laughed. How was my trip? My blood boiled, but I forced myself to keep my expression neutral. "Long," I said simply, setting my bag down. She beamed. "I missed you." I clenched my jaw, so hard it ached. "Did you?" She hesitated just for a second, but then she nodded, stepping closer. "Of course I did. Why do you sound so weird?" "Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea." I let her settle. I let her think she had gotten away with it. She moved around the kitchen, humming softly, fixing herself a cup of coffee like it was just another morning, like she wasn't the biggest liar I had ever known. And then I pulled her phone out of my pocket and tossed it onto the counter. The soft thud of it landing made her freeze. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, slowly, she turned to face me. Her eyes flickered to the phone, and I saw it. The fear. The instant, undeniable realization that she had been caught. Explain this. My voice was eerily calm. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't need to. The silence did all the work for me. She stared at the phone as if it had betrayed her, as if it were the problem, not her. Her hands trembled as she reached for it, unlocking the screen with shaky fingers. The message thread was already open. Last night was incredible, but we have to be careful. She inhaled sharply, her entire body going rigid. And then the performance began. Her voice broke. Her eyes filled with tears so fast. I almost believed she had been preparing them in advance. It's not what you think. I laughed. I actually laughed. Oh, then please tell me, what exactly am I thinking? Her breathing turned erratic. She was crumbling, grasping for anything that could save her. It was a mistake, she whispered, stepping closer, her hands trembling as she reached for me. It only happened once. I swear. It meant nothing. I stepped back. Her face crumpled. Baby, please, she choked out, tears spilling down her cheeks. I was lonely. I was confused. Lonely, I repeated, my voice razor sharp. She flinched. Lonely, I said again, this time louder, angrier. You weren't lonely. You were just a liar. Her sobs grew louder. She always did this, turned into the victim, made it about her feelings, her mistakes, her regret. I wasn't buying it. Not this time. I saw everything. I cut in, my voice low, steady. Cold. She froze mid-sentence. What? I saw it. I repeated. You. Him. Right here. In this house. In my bed. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She was speechless. And for the first time, she understood there was no escape from this. No excuse. No lie. No manipulation. She had lost. And now it was my turn. After watching my wife break down in front of me, spewing excuses, crocodile tears running down her face, I knew one thing. This wasn't enough. She wasn't the only one who betrayed me. There was someone else who needed to feel the weight of their actions. My boss. I waited until the next day. Let the dust settle. Let my wife think I was still processing, still deciding what to do, still shocked and hurt, like the heartbroken fool she wanted me to be. But I was already 3 steps ahead. That morning, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. Hey, Mr. Holloway, do you have a minute? His voice came through, smooth and confident. Morning, kid. What's up? I gritted my teeth at the fake friendliness. I need to talk to you. In person. A slight hesitation. Oh, everything okay? Yeah, elite. Just something important. Private. He took the bait. Sure. How about that little cafe on West 5th? Noon. Perfect. I hung up and smiled to myself. Noon. I arrived 10 minutes early, found a booth near the back, and ordered a black coffee. No cream, no sugar. By the time he walked in, I was already settled, my expression unreadable. He spotted me and grinned, strolling over like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't just slept with another man's wife, like he didn't deserve what was coming. Hey, bud, he greeted, sliding into the booth across from me. What's on your mind? I didn't smile, didn't return the fake pleasantries. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out the small flash drive, and dropped it on the table. Watch it. His smile wavered. He looked down at the drive, then back up at me, trying to read my face. What's this? I leaned back, crossing my arms. You tell me. Another pause. Then, slowly, his hand started to shake as he picked up the drive. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The cafe buzzed around us, people chatting, silverware clinking against plates, the hum of the espresso machine. But in our booth, silence. I saw it in his eyes before he even said a word. He knew. He knew exactly what was on that drive. Look, No. I cut him off, my voice steady. Don't lie. His mouth clamped shut. I leaned forward, lowering my voice, so only he could hear. I saw you. A flicker of panic crossed his face. I heard you. His fingers curled into a fist. I watched you walk into my house. I watched you touch her. He's here. I watched you go upstairs with her. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Gone was the confident, charming boss. Now, he just looked like a pathetic man who had finally been caught. I didn't mean for it to happen, he muttered, gripping the edge of the table. I scoffed. You didn't mean for it to happen? So what, you just tripped and fell into my wife? He winced. I wanted him to feel this. I wanted every second of this moment to burn into his mind. Because the truth was, I wasn't here to listen to his excuses. I was here to end him. You know, I said, tapping the flash drive. This little thing? It has everything. Footage. Audio. Your texts. Every disgusting little detail. He paled. So, here's how this is going to go, I continued, my voice eerily calm. You're going to walk out of here, and you're going to resign. His eyes snapped up. What? You heard me. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the bitterness settle on my tongue. You're going to write your resignation today. You're going to tell them you're stepping down for personal reasons. And you're never going to speak to me or my wife again. He stared at me like I had just slapped him. You can't be serious. I've built that company. You had a choice. I interrupted, my voice turning cold. You chose to FCK another man's wife. Now, you get to live with the consequences. Asterisk. For a moment, I thought he might fight back. Might argue. Might try to salvage the life he had just set on fire. But then, his shoulders slumped. His hands trembled as he reached for his coffee cup, but he didn't drink. He just sat there, staring at the table. Defeated. Good. You'll ruin me, he whispered. I leaned in. No, I said, my voice sharp as a blade. You ruined yourself. I grabbed my coat, stood up, and without another word, I walked away. I didn't go home that night. After walking out of that cafe, leaving my boss crumbling under the weight of his own betrayal, I drove aimlessly for hours. The city lights blurred past me, neon signs flashing, people moving through their lives as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had changed. The man I was before, the trusting husband, the devoted employee, the fool who thought his life was perfect, that man was gone. And in his place, someone stronger. Someone who knew exactly what needed to be done. The divorce papers. The next morning, I made an appointment with the best divorce lawyer in town. I walked into their office, sat down across from a sharp-eyed woman in a crisp navy suit, and slid the folder across the table. I want this done fast, I said, my voice firm. She opened the folder, scanned the documents, and looked up. Infidelity. I nodded. Do you have proof? I let out a cold laugh. Oh, I have more proof than you'll ever need. She smiled. Then this will be easy. And just like that, my 7-year marriage was officially on its way to being over. Her reaction. I didn't tell her in person. I didn't give her a dramatic confrontation or a final conversation filled with empty words. Instead, I let the paperwork do the talking. She found out when the divorce papers were hand-delivered to our house while she was sipping her morning coffee. And I wasn't there to see her face, but I wish I had been. Because the second she got them, my phone exploded with calls. At first, I ignored them, let her stew in her own panic. But then, the messages started. Please, we need to talk. You don't have to do this. We can fix this. It was a mistake. I was weak. It didn't mean anything. The last one made me laugh. A mistake? She planned it. She lied. She snuck around for who knows how long. There were no mistakes here. Only choices. And she made hers. The begging. Eventually, I picked up her call. Please, she sobbed into the phone. Just come home. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. But I love you, she cried. I stayed silent. Because love wasn't sneaking around behind your husband's back. Love wasn't bringing another man into our home. into our bed. Love wasn't smiling in my face while stabbing me in the back. Love was dead. I hope he was worth it, I said finally, my voice devoid of emotion. And then I hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to her. The ultimate karma. A week later, the real fun began. First, my boss was fired. Not just asked to resign. Not just quietly moved to another branch, fired. Apparently, someone had forwarded his affair to the company's board. Someone with photo and video evidence. Someone who knew exactly which board members would be the most offended by his little extracurricular activities. And that same someone might have also sent a copy to his wife. Yes, his wife. And guess what? She filed for divorce the exact same day I did. My exit. The moment I heard the news, I walked into the office with my resignation letter in hand. My now former boss's office was empty. He had already been escorted out. The staff was buzzing with gossip. Everyone had heard by now. I smiled, strolled into HR, and handed him my papers. "Are you sure?" the rep asked. "You don't have to leave just because he's gone." I chuckled. "Oh, I'm not leaving because of him. I was leaving because I was done. Done with lies. Done with backstabbers. Done with people who thought they could use me, manipulate me, take advantage of my loyalty. No more. I was free. The future without them." I took my severance package, a nice, fat check, walked out of that office for the last time, and never looked back. And as I stood outside, breathing in the crisp air for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. No more lies. No more betrayal. Just me. A new beginning. And the best part? Neither of them saw it coming.